You've been told to avoid the darkness, to smile through the pain, suppress the rage, and silence the voice inside that doesn't fit into the image of who you're supposed to be. But what if the very parts of you've spent a lifetime running from are the keys to unlocking your highest purpose? This isn't about self-improvement, it's about self-confrontation. If you stay with me through this journey, you'll discover why the chaos inside you isn't a curse, but a compass. Why your shadow isn't evil, but essential. And why clarity only comes when you stop fearing what's broken and start listening to what it's been trying to say all along. Very well. Here's the expansion of key points. 1, 2, and 3. From the speech, from chaos to clarity. Your shadow is not evil, it's the key to your purpose. In the deeply introspective and motivational tone, inspired by Carl Jung, the flow is continuous, educational, and emotionally engaging, without formal conclusions. You have been taught to fear the parts of yourself that don't fit the mold, the impulses you hide, the thoughts you judge, the desires you suppress. You are taught to label them as wrong, shameful, unworthy. Society, your upbringing, even your religion perhaps, has told you that light is good and darkness is bad. But this split is the very root of your inner division, because the shadow, that mysterious and often terrifying force within, is not evil by nature. It is simply unknown. It is what you've banished into the unconscious, not because it was truly wicked, but because someone, somewhere, told you it was unacceptable. And so begins the exile of the self. But what if the things you hate about yourself, the envy, the rage, the hunger, the fear are not signs of failure, but fragments of power? What if, buried beneath the chaos of your emotional storms, lies a voice trying to tell you something essential? The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you. It is the mirror you've been avoiding because you fear what you'll see. But there is no transformation without reflection. And there is no reflection without the courage to face what is raw and real within you. To reject the shadow is to remain half-born. To ignore it is to live a fragmented life, forever reacting to things you don't understand in yourself. The person who believes they are purely good, purely kind, purely light, they are the most dangerous. Not only to others, but to themselves. Because they have not made peace with their inner world. They project their disowned qualities onto others, blaming the outside world for what festers within. This is why the most important journey is inward, not upward. It is not about climbing toward an ideal of perfection. It is about descending into the forgotten basement of the psyche and turning on the light. When you descend into yourself, when you begin to face the shadow, you are not embracing evil, you are embracing truth. You begin to see that your impatience is linked to your drive, that your anger hides your boundaries, that your jealousy points to unlived potential. These things are not moral failings. They are signals from the unconscious, calling you back to wholeness. The problem is not that you have darkness. The problem is that you've allowed it to remain unconscious. And what remains unconscious will rule your life from the shadows. And you will call it fate. The chaos that rises inside, when the shadow stirs, is not a punishment. It is an invitation. It is the moment the psyche demands your attention, no longer willing to be split. The more you repress, the more violently your unconscious seeks expression. That panic attack, that outburst, that irrational fear. These are eruptions of neglected parts of yourself. They are not random. They are meaningful. The soul, like the earth, cracks before it blooms. And the chaos is sacred if you are willing to listen to it. The journey to selfhood is not linear. It is not a straight line toward success or peace. It is a spiral, a descent before ascent. And that descent will bring you face to face with everything you've avoided. Your inner critic, the pain from your childhood, the moments you betrayed yourself to belong. Chaos is born in the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. When the mask can no longer contain the truth, it begins to break. And in that breaking, there is pain. But there is also opportunity. You must ask yourself, am I willing to feel the chaos to find my clarity? Most people aren't. They numb, they distract. They create noise so they don't have to hear their souls cry. But the one who listens, that one begins to awaken. They begin to see that pain is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. It is the teacher that opens the door to depth. And in that depth, you find the roots of who you really are, not who you were told to be, not who you perform to be, but the one beneath it all. The authentic self is not born in peace. It is born in the friction between light and dark, in the willingness to hold tension until insight emerges. To navigate this chaos, you must move beyond judgment. The voice in your head that says, I shouldn't feel this. I shouldn't think that. I should be better by now. That voice is the remnant of external control. It is not your soul. Your soul is more ancient than shame. It does not divide your being into good and bad, worthy and unworthy. It seeks only wholeness. And wholeness requires honesty. You must look at yourself not with condemnation, but with curiosity. Ask, why do I react this way? What am I defending? What am I avoiding? These questions are the beginning of wisdom. You don't heal the shadow by fighting it. You heal it by listening to it. You bring it to consciousness by sitting with it, by tracing the thread of your reactions to their source. Perhaps your rage is not mere tempered, is the unexpressed voice of a child who was never allowed to say no. Perhaps your fear is not weakness. It is the memory of trauma that taught you safety meant silence. Perhaps your jealousy is not pettiness. Is your creativity suffocating under comparison? When you begin to decode these inner messages, you begin to understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you gain the power to choose differently. Integration is not an event. It is a process. A lifelong practice of becoming increasingly whole. And this means letting go of the fantasy that healing will make you flawless. It won't. It will make you real. It will make you human. And in that humanness, there is strength. Because a person who has embraced their shadow is no longer easily manipulated. They cannot be guilted, shamed, or controlled by their unconscious wounds. They know who they are. They are dangerous not because they dominate others, but because they no longer need to. But this process begins with the smallest acts of self. The moment you pause before reacting. The moment you ask, is this emotion mine, or is it a mask for something deeper? The moment you speak truth when silence would be easier. Integration is not always dramatic, is often quiet, internal, and unseen. But over time, it transforms you. Your presence becomes more grounded. Your energy becomes clearer. Your choices become aligned. And others may not know what changed, but they will feel it. Because you are no longer fragmented. You are whole. And make no mistake, this integration is not only for your own benefit. It is for the world. A fragmented person fragments everything they touch. Relationships, systems, communities. But a whole person becomes a center of gravity, an anchor in chaos, a light in confusion. This is why doing shadow work is not selfish. It is sacred. It is service. It is the internal revolution that creates external change. The chaos we see in the world is the collective shadow made visible. And the only way to heal it is for each of us to begin within. You will resist this work. Your ego will scream. Your defenses will rise. Your mind will justify avoidance with every rational excuse. But the deeper part of you, the self, beneath the knows. It knows that the old strategies no longer serve you. That pretending is exhausting. That clarity is not found in perfection, but in the embrace of contradiction. You can be kind and still angry. You can be spiritual and still struggling. You can be wounded and still worthy. The shadow does not cancel your light. It completes it. And the moment you begin to hold both, to carry contradiction without collapsing into judgment, you become something rare, an integrated human, someone who no longer fears themselves, someone who can walk into the chaos of life and not be consumed, because they have already walked through the chaos within. This is the birth of inner clarity, not a naive hope that life will be easy, but a deep trust that you are strong enough to face it all, because you have faced yourself. And in doing so, you have become whole enough to lead others into their own healing. There is no greater clarity than the one that arises from integration. It is not a clarity of answers, but of presence. You may not always know what to do, but you will know who you are. And that knowing becomes a compass in every storm. But this clarity cannot be faked. It cannot be taught through slogans or books alone. It must be earned through dissent. Through sitting in the fire of your discomfort long enough to hear what it's really trying to say. And when you do, when you finally stop running, you'll realize that what you feared most was never the shadow itself, was your own power waiting to be reclaimed. And so we arrive at the most paradoxical truth of the journey inward, that the very traits you once despised, rejected, or feared may hold the clues to your life's greatest meaning. This is the sacred irony of the shadow. It hides your calling in the places you would least expect to find it. Not in your socially approved qualities, not in your polished performance, but in the murky depths of your inner contradictions. The self you long to become is not behind a wall of perfection, but behind a veil of misjudged instincts and misinterpreted emotions. The parts of you labeled too much, not enough, dangerous, or embarrassing, they are not accidental. They are your soul's message, written in the ink of distortion. And when you learn to read that message, you begin to understand what you are here for. The shadow is the unconscious map to your purpose. It holds what has been repressed, yes, but also what has been forgotten, unused, unlived. Think of the artist who was told that expressing their imagination was childish, or the leader who was shamed for being bold, or the healer who learned to hide their sensitivity to survive. In each of these, the shadow forms not because they are wrong, but because they are powerful in a way that threatens someone else's comfort. The world conditioned you to disown your genius by making it look like dysfunction. But dysfunction, when understood, often reveals the dormant gift. The rage becomes the voice of justice. The stubbornness becomes resilience. The anxiety becomes intuition in disguise. But only when you stop running from it and begin to explore it. This exploration demands radical honesty. It asks that you question not just what you do, but why you do it. Why do certain traits trigger you in others? Why do you avoid situations that push you beyond your comfort? Why do you continue cycles that leave you empty? The answers to these questions don't just free you, they guide you. They point you toward where your purpose lives. Because the shadow isn't just personal, it's archetypal. Within you live ancient blueprints. The warrior, the lover, the magician, the sage. Each archetype comes with both light and shadow. And if you repress the shadow side, you never unlock the full potential of the role you were meant to embody. You become fragmented, confused, misaligned. But if you're willing to face both the power and the danger of your archetype, you become whole, and in wholeness, your calling becomes clear. True purpose cannot be imposed from the outside. It emerges from the depths, from within the psyche, like a buried treasure that calls out in dreams, impulses, and unexplained longings. Your task is not to invent it, but to recover it, to remove the debris of conditioning that has buried your essence. The soul does not shout, it whispers. And often, it whispers through pain, through resistance, through longing. The desire that burns within you for something more is not a weakness. It is the shadowed voice of your destiny. And until you listen, it will haunt you. But once you do, it begins to guide you toward your work, toward your people, toward the role that only you can fulfill, not because you are special, but because you are integrated. But there is a cost. To live from your shadow-integrated purpose means taking responsibility for the unconscious parts of yourself. It means no longer blaming the world, your past, or your pain for your decisions. It means recognizing that you are the architect of your inner world, and that unexamined patterns will continue to shape your outer reality until you claim them. This responsibility is not a burden, it is liberation. Because what you own cannot control you, and what you control cannot sabotage you. When you stop saying, I don't know why I keep doing this, and start asking, what does this behavior protect me from? You step out of victimhood and into power. And this power is subtle. It does not boast. It does not manipulate. It does not seek validation. It is grounded, rooted in truth. It is the power of the one who has faced themselves and come back with a deeper understanding. It is the power of the one who no longer needs to prove, because they know. And knowing who you are, shadows and all, becomes your compass. Your clarity. The world is full of noise, confusion, and false paths. But the individual who has taken responsibility for their unconscious becomes immune to the pull of the inauthentic. They walk with purpose, not because they have all the answers, but because they are no longer afraid of the questions. The unconscious self is not a float, is a frontier. A vast, untamed land filled with lost memories, hidden fears, and suppressed brilliance. To take responsibility for it is to reclaim sovereignty over your mind, your emotions, your actions. It is to recognize that everything you do, every choice, every reaction, every desire is shaped by something deeper. And until you bring those roots into the light, you will continue to live as a stranger to yourself. But once you begin the with of making the unconscious conscious, you become whole. And in that wholeness, you become trustworthy. Not perfect, but trustworthy. Trustworthy to yourself. Trustworthy to others. Trustworthy to life. The world does not need more performers. It does not need more people pretending to have it all together while privately unraveling. It needs people who are deeply honest with themselves, who have met their own darkness and come out wiser, softer, and stronger. People who can sit in silence without needing to escape. People who can witness the suffering of others without judgment. People who can hold both pain and beauty in the same breath. This kind of person is rare because they have done the inner work. They have stopped hiding from themselves, and in doing so, they have become clear. Clarity is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of integration. You can be in chaos and still be clear. You can be grieving and still be grounded. You can be lost in the wilderness of life and still trust your inner compass. Because clarity is not found in control, it is found in consciousness. And consciousness grows when you embrace the fullness of who you are, without fragmentation. When you stop compartmentalizing your personality into acceptable and unacceptable. When you bring every part of yourself into dialogue, and this dialogue is the beginning of transformation. The light that shines brightest is the one that has passed through the shadow. It is not naive. It is not shallow. It is deep, earned, rooted. And that light is what the world is longing for, not artificial positivity, not motivational platitudes, but truth, realness, depth. That is what draws people in. That is what heals. That is what awakens. And you do not find that kind of light by denying your shadow. You find it by descending into it, not to be consumed, but to emerge with treasure. Each time you integrate another fragment of your shadow, you become more whole. Each time you take responsibility for your inner world, your outer world begins to shift. Each time you choose honesty over image, truth over pretense, courage over comfort, you sharpen your clarity, you align your life, you become a mirror for others to do the same. This is not a path of ease, but it is a path of depth. And in that depth, purpose is no longer a question, it is a presence, a way of being, a resonance that guides your steps, not from fear, but from inner authority. This kind of clarity is not taught in schools. It is not handed down by culture. It is earned in the crucible of the self, through sleepless nights, through honest journaling, through facing your triggers, instead of avoiding them, through confronting the moments you felt powerless and choosing, this time, to act from wisdom. It is the quiet revolution of saying, I will no longer abandon myself to be accepted. I will no longer suppress my truth to be safe. I will no longer betray my soul to maintain an image. And when you begin living from this place, your life becomes a signal, not noise, not confusion, but clarity. You are not here to fit in. You are here to awaken. An awakening begins not with answers, but with awareness. The awareness that your shadow is not a mistake, it is a map. That your chaos is not a punishment, it is a portal. That your wholeness does not come through escape, but through encounter. You must meet every part of yourself. Invite it in. Listen to what it wants. Not to indulge it, but to understand it. Because only what is understood can be transformed. And transformation is the soil from which purpose grows. Not purpose as performance, but purpose as presence. Purpose that is felt, not forced. Purpose that is lived, not explained. Let the world chase clarity through achievement and perfection. You, instead, find it through integration. Through the humble, courageous, and often uncomfortable task of becoming whole. And as you do, you will find that clarity was never something outside you. It was within, waiting for you to return. Waiting for you to stop running. Waiting for you to see that the shadow was never your enemy, was the part of you that never gave up on becoming real.